Oops. That should tell you how tired I am. Oh, lordy. What's up, everybody? I'm getting home. It's like 3 a.m., something like that over here. But I wanted to show you guys while it's still super fresh, just coming into the home. A couple of critters we got. Alright. So this is called mulch. It's a really cool critter. I'm kidding. And the jokes are bad. I'm tired. Get over it. So, oh, here's one right off the bat. So these are fire skinks. I got a pair of them. I believe male and female. This looks like it might be the male. I don't know for sure. I haven't actually go through the process of sexing them, but he's got a big bulky head, so I'm assuming it's the male. Ooh, okay, calling your tits. Anyway, that's a fire skink. Now they can be, their colors unfortunately are not really sexually dimorphic, but males usually tend to be a little brighter. I don't know if they're full grown or not. This one certainly appears to be. It may actually be the female because it's a slightly duller shade. Yeah, there you go, girl. Let me see, where's the other? Oh, there we go. This one here. Oh, I had them backwards. Oh, yeah, this is probably the male. Okay, set it backwards. Anyway, he's gorgeous. Look at how bright he is and fiery red. You can see where their name comes from. So, we're not sure what we're going to name them yet. They didn't come with names. I've already fed them. They don't have metabolic bone disease. They appear to be in really good health. So, the fellow I got them from simply said he can't take care of them anymore, and he wanted someone he could trust to take care of them. He didn't give me names, so I was thinking something like Ember for the really bright colored one, and Ash for the darker one. My wife says she likes Sizzle and Fizzle, so we'll see, one or the other. Pretty sure I got a male and female in here. Not 100% sure, I haven't sexed them yet, and they're kind of difficult to sex, like many of the skinks tend to be difficult to sex. But anyway, this will be their setup for tonight, because that's what they came home in. I'll get them set up in something a little better for them tomorrow. We did a long, like 9 hours worth of driving around. Sorry, you get to see my ugly mug now. First we went up to Greenville, which is 2.5, almost 3 hours away. And then we went from Greenville over to nearly Atlanta, to Windsor, Georgia. You can see the circles under my eyes. I'm real tired. To pick up an African egg-eating snake. The individuals I spoke with for the egg eater, the AEE, were Lisa and her daughter and daughters, I should say, and some of their extended family. And it didn't come home with an aquarium or a terrarium, so it rode the ride home in this here with an ajar lid just sitting in our laps basically the whole time. Because I don't have holes in it, so trust me, it didn't go out of air. There was no threat there. And it didn't cook in the car because we were in it the whole time, la-da-da-da-da. Transferring it over to a little traveler case, one that I've got that's semi-arboreal, so it can do a little climbing if it wants, and it can't escape through these pegs, so no worries there. But it's a traveler's case. They were very concerned because the snake stopped eating and hasn't eaten for them in quite some time, so they were concerned. At first glance, it looks like a male African egg-eating snake. I'm tired. They're kind of fragile, but really cool snake. Now it is a little long, I feel like, for a male. They said that they believe it's a female, which very well could be. If it is a female, it's still juvenile. Got some growing and some bulking up to do, but males generally do stay about that thickness. It's wild caught, and that inherently presents some additional troubles. They said it had mites when they got it. Quiet, Chiba. My cat is all of a sudden interested in lovey-dovey and attention now that I turn the camera on. And that's probably stressing the snake out a little bit because cats would be seen as one of their natural predators. But anyway, snake handles very well for a wild caught. It does have some signs of attempted predation, in other words, scars from just being in the wild. I haven't sexed it yet, and I'm too tired to poke around trying to find the hemipenes tonight. See if it's a boy. Again, I'll do that tomorrow. It's a terrestrial. Oh, and by the way, the skinks are terrestrial, and some people even argue subterranean because they like to burrow, though they don't burrow very deep. So that's an argument there. There is a clip in the spine right at the tip of the tail, but no lost tail as far as I can tell, so it's got a broken spine. They are a fragile snake. Ooh, curious little guy. They are more fragile snakes. I keep pulling the camera away and it keeps coming. They're very curious. They love to climb. Of course they have to because, you know, that's how they get their food. So they're a very climby snake. They only eat eggs. And it's a really cool thing to see them eat it. They basically can swallow an egg up to about twice their diameter. And they put it into the back of their throat, somewhere around where my finger is right now. Oh, now it's crawling past it. They have some spines. Some of the vertebrae have spines that go inside their throat that basically break open the egg, and then they swallow all the juices by squeezing on the egg with their throat muscles and then regurgitating just the shell. They still do get a fair bit of calcium through this, but they rely on eating only eggs. And now, while most snakes, if given the opportunity, will eat eggs, this is one of the few species that can survive entirely, in fact only will survive entirely on eggs throughout its entire life. Right now it's about the size to eat finch eggs. They were feeding it button quail eggs, which it can eat. It is large enough to eat button quail eggs. I may go back to some finch eggs. They said it hasn't eaten in a long while, and they were very concerned because it's getting skinnier and it appears to be losing some weight, and now it's very curious about the camera again. Super curious. It's such a cute little guy. For those of you who send messages after these videos about whether it's going to be available for rehoming, yeah, maybe someday. As with all animals that I take in, I want to make sure it's very healthy, eating well, well adjusted, especially since this was a wild-caught snake before I go through any kind of rehoming. So it's going to be in the little traveler case for quarantining. They said it did have mites when they bought it from the reptile, I'm not going to say the name brand. Oh, it's tied up around itself. When they bought it from the reptile group that they bought it from, it came to them with mites, and they seem to have done a really good job about getting rid of the mites, because I can't see any at first. And a slightly deeper inspection, I went through and looked at the scales, rubbed the snake a little bit to see if I could find any mites. I did not find any. So they seem to have done a very good job meticulously doing it, getting rid of the mites. Oh, as I was saying, they eat eggs. They push it to the back of their throat against those spines that are part of their vertebrae. And you're going to have to excuse me if I don't get this word right. If I remember right, those spines are called hypophyses, something like that. I don't know. It's hypo something with a f sound. Again, I'm really tired. I'm probably butchering the hell out of it. In fact, I'm 100% sure I'm butchering the term very badly. But anyway, hypophyses, something like that. Those are, fancy word for spines at the back of the throat. Now, what I've done is I have heated one of the button quail eggs just to offer it. I'm going to put the snake through a brumation period, since in Africa we'd be getting ready to go through brumation. This would be about the time its natural meals would be coming to a close, because the bird breeding season over there would be ending. This is coming up to the start of winter here in Africa, so it would be getting ready for a brumation. I'll continue to weigh the snake if it doesn't eat, but brumation is fancy term for hibernation for reptiles. Oops, the little leather strap is getting in the way. So it basically means I'm going to bring it down to room temp and maybe even sub-room temp a little bit, somewhere in the low 70s. They're a nocturnal species, so they're normally used to kind of cooler temps, with a basking temp of mid-high 80 surface temp, and then cooler temps that they're used to. So around mid-70s, so I'll bring it to low 70s, maybe even very high 60s for brumation for a week, roughly. I have warmed up, like I said, one button quail egg, and I kind of put it in the top of the little thing that I'm going to use as a hide for quarantining. And since I'm doing brumation, I don't need a warm side to this habitat, but I will go through setting up a habitat and show you guys how I do that. It's already crawling up under the hide. It's got the pegs to climb on because they're terrestrial, which is a fancy word for ground, on the ground or above ground, and arboreal snakes, which is a fancy term for climbing in the trees kind of snake. I mean, they'd have to be, since that's where they get most of their meals. There aren't very many birds that lay eggs that they can eat on the ground. In Africa, which is where it was wild caught, it would be eating like finch eggs and some of the smaller canary species. Over here, it'll be finch eggs and quail eggs, button quails or spotted quail eggs. You can go to an Asian market if you have those, or you're wondering where to kind of get cheap quail eggs. As far as button quail eggs, those are more difficult to find. You might have to get them online, or thankfully, if you know some breeders that have eggs that are laid, there you go. Captive bred snakes, or once they're in captivity, oftentimes they prefer not to eat fertilized eggs. In the wild, they will eat fertilized eggs, but they won't eat a fertilized egg that is mostly developed, or even in some cases partially developed, because as you can imagine, once again, they break open an egg with spines and let the juices flow out and then regurgitate the egg. If it's a fully developed embryo in there, or a bird in there, you can crack open that egg, and then you might have a really aggravated bird trying to tweet at you or whatnot. So they won't eat a developed egg, and they smell an egg from very far away. They're incredible hunters when it comes to eggs, voracious little egg chasers, but they can go for months without eating. In fact, oftentimes they'll only eat for 3 or 4 months, in the wild anyway, 3 or 4 months out of the year. You got to be careful about feeding them too much in captivity even, because they can easily become obese if you feed them year-round. So anyway, some fun little tips or tidbits, blah blah blah, when it comes to that. Battery's about to die, so I'm going to go ahead and shut it down and go to bed. Through the magic of editing, we'll be back with the next one in the daytime. Whee! Oh, I forgot to mention this. I put the egg, or maybe I mentioned it, I'm so tired, maybe I don't know. I put the egg on top of the hide, because that'll allow for some enrichment and kind of give the feeling like it is having to hunt the egg or search for the egg to find the nest, like they would in the wild, since it was a wild-caught snake. And maybe it'll find it needed. If it's food source is too available, then they probably wouldn't feel very enriched. So I've got it kind of hidden, tucked away, like as if it were in a nest almost. Anyway, I don't know if I explained that or not. I'm going to bed. See you guys tomorrow, or in a few seconds, through the magic of video editing. Whee! Okie dokie. Through the magic of editing, it is now actually 2 days later. So I ended up keeping the snake in here one extra night, because I did not realize when I went to get the snake that I did not have another aquarium that was ready to go, because I went to pick up fire skinks. And it's a good thing I did, because if you guys will look, where is it? Well, oh, right there, I guess. Yeah, that is it. Okay. She has, hey, let go, eaten the other egg, or rather the egg that I put in there. Kind of hit it a little bit, so it's sort of like enrichment. Anyway, so the egg be ate. Ooh, let me move this. Anyway, so that's a good update. So she only went through, I keep saying she because that's as best as we can tell a she at this point. I get the sneaking suspicion it's a male, but all of my sexing methods have failed thus far, and I don't want to try to poke out his hemipenes, because Honestly, they're such a fragile snake that I don't like the idea of doing that, and I don't probe. I disagree with probing because well, one, I'm not experienced with probing. So if you have an expert that's experienced, that's a totally different scenario. But I am not said expert at probing. So if you do it wrong, then you could leave your snakes sterile. Would you stop? I'm trying to get you to do a little climbing and then crawl around here. Back in there for right this minute then, with your barfed up egg shell. Oh, he's halfway out the aquarium and he's still like, oh, how do I get out of here? Every time I've opened this lid, he's come, oh wait, no. There's the egg shell. Right there, okay. I was like, that sure doesn't look like an eggshell on the other side, but this here definitely is. Okay. Anyway, point is, he's definitely eaten. Maybe it was just the 2-day brimation period, which is very short. Or the fact that he had to go and search for it a little bit. I mean, he is a wild caught snake, so you know, having to search for their meals probably feels a lot more natural to him. He's chasing his own tail. It's like that game. What was that game called? Ironically, I think it was called Snake, where if you bit his own tail, then the game ended. Whew. I'm tired. Done a lot today. Anyway, he's not done his little snake rattle by rubbing his scales together at all, so he doesn't feel threatened. Although I did accidentally just move real quickly and startled him a little bit, so almost looked like he was going to there for a moment. He does really well, though. I'm going to start saying he because I get the sneaking suspicion it is a male, but time will tell. I don't have the appropriate lamp to see through the tip of the tail to see if he's got hemipenes. I'll try to get one of those later. And I don't feel comfortable trying to poke his hemipenes out because it's such a little snake, and they're very fragile. They are. I'm really tired again. They are a very fragile snake, as you can tell right there. He's already had his spine has already been broken once, thankfully. It's right on the tip of the tail, so it's not life-threatening at all, and it's already healed before I got him. Previous owners took really good care of him, as far as I could tell. They got him with a mite infestation. I've combed over him a few times. Have not seen the first sign of mites, so they did a wonderful job removing them. No metabolic bone disease because that's a tail break. He is eating, as shown right there. That is a button quail. Oops. Button quail egg. Anyway. So, what are you fussing about? Kicking your foot, huh? Oh, did I just wake you up? You were asleep? That's what you were kicking about? Here, visit Belle. Oh goodness. Anyway, so you was in there for 2 days actually because I didn't realize that I didn't have another aquarium for him. So I now have another little tin gal, and this should work. I got a lid for it somewhere over the rainbow. Nope, that's not it. That's Lucky's lid. Anyway, I've got a lid for it somewhere around here. And I'm gonna go ahead and move him over to this. I've got a little bit of bark shavings. They're a little moist, more moist than he'd probably be very comfortable with since they don't take high humidity, about 40%. They're more of an arid environment, but not true desert kind of snake. That trees and whatnot on the edge of deserts, that kind of environment. Whew, pardon me. I'm yawning so much right now because I'm so tired. It's late in the evening when I get to do this recording. So I'm going to go ahead and set them up a real thin layer of that because they don't burrow. And I've got some heat treated, there they are up there, lamps from one of my vines that making all sorts of mistakes tonight. Anyway, limbs from my oh wait, geez, you guys probably saw like the inside of my nose from that, or my eyeball. Whoops. There's yet another mistake. Oh, wrong direction. Oh, anyway, I am tired. So I'm going to set up the snakes so that way he doesn't have to spend another night in that little bitty container, because I don't feel very good about that. It makes me feel guilty. Today when I was out and about, I picked up this puppy so it can go up there on the rack. I hope you guys are getting some of that too. It's contagious, you know. Yawn. 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 Anyway. Yep. So, I'm going to put Belle in the aquarium with a little bit of, I'm talking in circles now, a little bit of a substrate, but he's not a burrowing or subterranean snake. And then they are terrestrial and semi-arboreal, so they love climbing. So I cut down one of my vines in the yard, and that's the heat-treated remains of said vine. I'm going to put those in here so he's got plenty of places to climb. And eventually I'm going to buy, I got to go get a new one because the other ones are in use, a finch nest. Oh, pardon me. A little finch nest, and that'll be where I place his food. So that way he has to climb a stick and then feel like he found the nest, climb into the nest and eat. I'll probably put 2 eggs at a time, because they would normally in the wild they find a nest, they climb into said nest, they eat 2-3 eggs, and in some cases in the wild that'll be all they have all year. Is just they're such an amazing little snake. They have 1, 2, 3 meals, sometimes more, if they're fortunate. Pretty good bit more in a year, and then that's all they need. They're a very fragile but very easy to take care of snake if you know what you're doing. But they can also be really picky eaters, because as they're going around looking for these eggs, if they're fertilized eggs, then they have very acute sense of taste. They can taste not only fresh eggs, but how long an egg has been since it's been laid, and if there's an embryo in the egg, and if so, how far along that embryo is. Because as I probably mentioned in the earlier video, I just don't remember now, or the earlier part of this video as I'm gonna wind up editing, that they'll swallow an egg, it goes in a couple inches into their throat to these spines, part of their vertebrae that have spines that go into their throat, and then they crack open the egg. There's, like I said, the shell. Then they use those same throat muscles to squeeze the egg's juices, and then they swallow all the juices. But obviously, if it's a fully or nearly fully developed bird, then they're not going to be squeezing a whole lot of good stuff out of that. So they totally ignore those eggs, and they'll go on to find a new nest. And that's what they do in the wild. It's really cool, because these are one of the few snakes. A lot of snakes will eat eggs if given the opportunity, but this is one of the few. In fact, a lot of reptiles will. But anyway, this is one of the few reptiles that can and does, in fact, live entirely on a diet of eggs. At her size, or his size, button quail eggs would be the primary part of the diet. Maybe finch eggs. Not quite large enough for Coturnus quail eggs, like a full-grown female would be. I can get access to finch eggs. I've already got some button quail eggs, and the previous owners gave me nearly a full dozen of button quail eggs, so that's awesome. And then, yeah, that's it. Finch. In the wild, in Africa, they would be dining on, finch eggs and some of the wild types of canary out there. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, let me get this started, set it up, and I'll do a little quick video showing the setup completed, or at least partly completed. You guys are absolutely just going to have to forgive me for the lighting here. It is not great. I will get a better image with better lighting a little bit later on. Here you go, Belle. Don't even know if you guys can see that, honestly. Which Belle is perfectly okay with because they're a nocturnal snake. So they do most of their climbing and running around at night. I think it's fair to say he likes his new enclosure. The substrate is a combination of a tiny little layer of the bark. I stole some from the fire skinks. Of course, that's really good and fresh. So I threw just a little bit in there, and then on top of that, they don't need much. On top of that, it's just some coconut husk and peat. It's really dry substrate, really soft substrate. It's really good for them to climb on. It's similar to what they're used to in the wild, so hopefully he or she feels right at home. And as I said, I'm going to be using the same little hide, at least for the moment, till I can go out and get him a better one. Anyway, so there we go. He's got plenty of climbing available to him, which is good for enrichment. As I said, this is all heat treated. You guys will recognize this. Those of you who have been part of the channel for a long enough time will recognize this as... You guys remember what used to sit there? The big old vine that the lizards would sleep on every night? Well, we're looking into selling the house, so unfortunately I cut it all the way down to right there. I left it tall enough that it can start to come back, so the next person who decides to, you know, get into this house, if they choose to, well, they can do the same thing I did and let it grow up all over the, you know, there and up into here, and it was literally everywhere. I mean, you can literally see where it was, where the leaves were touching just the roof, and it came out to about right here. Anyway, you guys have seen it in other videos, or if you haven't, because maybe this is one of the first videos you're checking out or whatever, then you can go back into the old ones if you really care to, and check it out there. Anyway, so for the moment, that's Belle's new enclosure. I don't have space for them yet on the reptile rack. And then we got the rat rack here. The other reptile rack that has a lot of the food and supplies, and Tarzan down there because Wifey wants Tarzan next to her. So we got to put together our next rack, which is sitting up there for now. And once we move the rats over to here, don't get nausea while I swing you guys around, after we move the exercise machine, and good lord, you're starting to see what I've been going through. Then we'll build it out to right here, and then we'll have space to put these guys. Thankfully, as they are both nocturnal species, and one's even partially subterranean species, they don't need a whole lot of lighting, but I'll get them set up with something a little bit later on. Just have one little hanging heat, and probably a heat ceramic, and like a 13-watt UVB, and I'll give them a day-night cycle, just so if they choose to bask, they can. Most likely, neither the fire skinks nor the AEE, that's African egg eater, will be very interested in doing a whole lot of basking. But they'll have it available to them because UVB lights, just like with Lucky down there, UVB lights, and the red-eyed crocodile skinks for that matter, and all the leopard geckos for that matter, while they aren't necessary, they do benefit from them if they choose to do any basking. So that's our update on Belle. Oh, let me go get the lid. The lid's sitting on my really dirty desk right now because we just did a lot of moving stuff around. Like I said, forgive the mess. I know it's bad. I know it's really bad. Get over it. Don't judge me. Or do, I mean, you know, whatever. Fire skinks don't really need a lid. They're not prone to climbing. However, there we go. And that is a weighted lid. But I'll probably still get some snake clamps like I've got on center ropes cage next time I run out, so I can go ahead and lock it in as well. Anyway, well, that was a lot for now.